I need to do is think of what's going to come out of there. It's either one very large stone, or in this case, saw through the centre there and make two stones out of that.
And how many inches are each piece there? Just so people have an idea.
Okay, this piece here is going to be about an inch long. A big triangle, almost an inch, sort of inch by an inch. This one likewise. I saw a little piece off the end there. An inch, maybe a little bit more than an inch, close to an inch that way, 3/4 of an inch that way. So two stones there. One stone there, another stone there. Lovely colour in this stone. Lovely colour. A lot of colour all through this stone. Really beautiful piece of matrix.
On both sides.
On both sides now. If we look here, that seam comes up and around. What I'm tempted to do is put a saw cut through there. Expose more of that colour on the main stone, and then the offcut, I can cut a smaller stone out of the offcut piece. Maybe an oval from there. And then the main stone will be on this side,
and hopefully the oval will have colour on the face,
yes,
on the dome.
Yeah, but probably the face of this big stone will actually be up there, that'll be the back of it.
Right.
So probably two stones out of that. What I'm going to do is do a range of sizes for you, Trent, out of this next parcel. So this one, lovely colour again, lovely centre of colour in there, and take away some of the brown edge and end up with a nice drop shape. May even be an even drop rather than a free-form drop on that one.
Yeah.
Lovely little pendant
symmetrical.
stone. Yeah, symmetrical. I would think so, but what I always like to do is take off the outside, take off the rubbish first, and then make a final decision.
Okay.
Shape the stone first, have a look at it, and then make the decision on its final. Okay, a piece of courier matrix with lovely colour just splashing all through the surface of it. And goes all the way through, so regardless of how I shape that stone, there's always going to be colour showing on the surface.
Okay.
Right, so what I do is I'll take away all this soft outer skin material and then make a decision. But once again, that's starting to look like a big oval.
Yep.
But once again, I leave that final shape decision until I've removed all of the rubbish material from the outside.
Chances are with that piece it's definitely a symmetrical shape anyway.
It's looking very much that way, yes.
Cool.
Now this one's very, very similar to the last one, so same will apply. Courier matrix, remove this soft outer material, and the possibility of another symmetrical large oval shape out of that one.
Would there be a matching pair, those two?
I will think about that, because very much similar,
colour, yeah.
Very similar.
Looks like the slices were cut.
It may well be that those slices came from one piece of band.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Lovely piece, this one. Lovely piece of material.
Nice pattern.
Lovely pattern.
Large colour.
Big stone, this one. Big stone. So
how big is that, would you say?
Almost 2 inches long. 2 inches long. Straight down there, take off that soft material off that side. A little bit of that soft material skin off that side. And a very large, and then just round the bottom a little, round the bottom a little. And it's just all colour, all opal, all through that stone. So a big piece, 2 inches long when it's done.
Okay. And it's a flat.
A big, oh no, I'll get a slight dome on it. Always try for a dome on it for appearance, and may actually drill that one at that point.
Okay. So we're going to end up with a drilled piece at the end.
Yes.
For a pendant?
For a big pendant.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Look at the colour. That's what I was hoping.
Wow.
There would be more colour on the inside of that piece.
Awesome. Really,
That's going
really
to be,
awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful stone.
Top
That will be-
piece.
That will be a beautiful stone. Little thin end there that will come off.
Lovely. And the pattern's the same on the other piece, which means you've got almost a match pair there, huh?
Almost, except remember, one thick piece and the other one's only very, very thin.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
tempting,
Yeah.
except we've got the different thickness.
Let's come back to it.
What I would think of this one, because of the thinness of the material, is put a saw cut through there to make, as I first thought, a smaller stone out of that off-cut piece.
Yeah.
Because if you cut it big, that's too brittle, it may break.
Yeah, especially during setting.
Better off to still
Nice.
going to be a beautiful stone. It will be a lovely stone. Saw cut down through that band of brown. I'll take a small piece off the side. If you've already worked out the shape approximately, you can save grinding time by sawing off the waste material.
So did they come out like you thought they were going to come out?
Very much so, because all this material has been sliced out of the Koroit seam, so you've got a fair idea of what you're starting with.
Okay.
Occasionally you'll get a disappointment, and occasionally you'll get a bonus too. But generally, because it's already been pre-sliced when I buy the parcel of material, you have a good idea of what it's going to be like. What I've done so far is remove all of the soft skin of this piece of Koroit matrix. Take all the little skin off. So there's the approximate shape. Now I make the decision, do I leave it as a free form, or do I take a little bit off that side and just a little bit off that side and turn it into a symmetrical stone. So at this point is when I start to make the decisions on what the final shape of the stone will be. And in this case, I'm going to turn it into symmetrical.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Definitely. Okay, once again, all of the soft material has been removed. What I'm going to do is leave this one slightly free-form, so the ironstone border follows the pattern of the opal there. Rather than making it completely symmetrical, then the colour pattern would be uneven. So this, follow the colour and leave the stone slightly irregular, free-form. The next one I'm going to work on is the other part of what had been a large piece that I cut into two. So there's one piece already pre-formed, there's the next one about to start. This particular stone, what I will do is I will drill a hole at that point for a pin to hold the bail.
A 2 mil hole?
A 2mm hole. through there, and then you can have a veil.
Then I'll hand make a veil for that.
Yes. And I'll just take a little bit more on the top. Okay, so that's a candidate for drilling.
You're the man.
We can see it's going to be an oval. Already had most of the waste material sawn off. So first thing is we take off all the little sharp points, and it already starts to look like an oval. Where we have the possibility of a pair of oval stones. What I'll now do is I will grind this one down to its preform, and then I will measure the two, and then maybe reduce one to match the other. The material is so similar, you should be able to cut a pair out of this.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, the second one has now been preformed. If we check the sizes, always measure the smaller one first. So it's 19 millimeters wide, 19 millimeters wide, 23.5 millimeters wide, long. So 23.5 by 19. The second one, just a touch over the 19 millimeters wide.
19.3.
And 25 long. So if I take a very small amount off the side, 1.5 millimeters off the long axis, then we have a matched pair. So that's what we'll do. Tiny bit off there, a little bit more off the ends. This one I plan cutting a single large stone out of this to make it a little bit more attractive. As a pendant, I will tape the end a little. So first thing, get rid of the soft material. Before to expose all this beautiful colour.
Wow, magnificent colour.
Not sure what shape it will finish up until I start taking off the skin and here and then make the decision. Some of the toroid matrix will have holes drilled in the top, so a simple bail can be added to the piece of stone. I drill a hole in the top. To do that, have a series of little diamond drill bits, different sizes, different shapes. If we're going to use bails, we want fairly small diameter holes, about 2 millimeter. So a combination of these will end up with a 2 millimeter hole drilled through the stone. 20 grit. Yep. First sanding, rough sanding.
And what is the sanding pad?
It's diamond impregnated fabric. A lot of people use wet and dry sandpaper. Diamond pads, much more expensive but much more durable. They'll last a lot longer, do a lot more stones before they need replacing.
And how many sanding stages do you go through?
I do 4 stages, 220, 375, 600, then down to 1000 diamond pre-polish. When the 1000 gets worn down, the pad starts to wear and the diamond loses its sharpness. It actually gives it almost a perfect polish even at that point. And then after the 1000 then goes to a polishing with the pad.
Final polish.
Final polish.
So this is step 1
This is step 1 of the sanding process, yes.
of the 4 sanding processes.
Now, with the larger stones, it's not necessary to put them onto a dop stick, if you're careful that is. You can often hand hold these during the sanding process. Smaller stones must always be put on a dop stick, otherwise they'll fly out of your fingers. But the larger stones is enough area to get hold of and then work them. Of course, some of this ability is dependent on the experience the cutter has had too. A new cutter would always, and should always, put them on a dop stick. One with a lovely colour.
So what does sanding do? What's the object?
Well, the sanding will remove all the little high spots initially and then give a nice smooth surface.
So you mean undulating surface?
No, a nice smooth. Try and do away with the undulating surface.
Right. And you also are finalizing the shape.
And just taking out any very small irregularities in the shape.
Okay. You're also, I see that you're finalizing the bezel.
Yes, do that as well. And start to produce a curve leading from the edge of the stone towards the top of the stone.
Creating a dome.
Creating a dome. Now most of the material will be very, very low dome, the way the stone is, and if it's very large, a high dome would be too heavy to wear as jewellery. So
Right.
fairly low domes, just a very gentle curve on the top.
And the domes were predetermined basically from the way that it was sliced up originally.
In this case, yes, yes. The whole sanding process is to give the stone a nice even dome, get rid of the irregularities, but also importantly to get rid of the scratches from the previous step. So the finer the sanding, the finer the scratches, until you get to this pre-polish stage when you should remove all of the scratches on a stone and get it ready then for final polishing. So this stone just has been pre-polished. Next step, polish, completion.
So this is the 5th sanding disc since the last time we filmed,
No, I have 4 sanding discs.
and this is the first of the polishing discs, so it's the 5th disc.
No, the 4th disc. The last of the sanding is actually the pre-polish, because it's very, very, very fine diamond.
Okay.
So call it sanding, superfine sanding equals pre-polish.
So it's been about half an hour to 3/4
Yeah,
of an hour
half to 3/4 an hour to do this little
For-
parcel. Yeah,
for 8 pieces.
8 pieces.
And there's one more stage to go after this.
And then we go now to the polish stage after this, yes. And provided all the sanding steps have been followed correctly, this final step does not take too long for each piece. So all we're doing now is removing the last of the very fine scratches from the previous sanding disc. Not removing any material, just taking out the very fine scratches.
So what this actually does in layman's terms is it gives it a shiny finish on the face of the opal.
Yes, that's it.
Again, you call this a pre-polish.
A pre-polish, because the final polish will be even shinier than this. But by now I'm not taking out any of the little humps, bumps or anything, just removing the fine scratches.
It's like a buffing for a car.
Largely that, yes. Okay, with final polish, it depends on what material you're working, whether you use diamond, very, very superfine diamond in a pad, or one of the oxides, tin oxide or cerium oxide. For this Koroit material, just use a very, very superfine diamond to get a final polish. Solid opal, other materials you may use cerium oxide or tin oxide, but in this case I'm just using very, very fine diamond in this final pad to get the polish. There it is. Lovely piece of Koroit matrix. Okay, that's the material now finished. Very much as we thought it would be. Those with good colour probably be set in a solid colour mounting. Others have holes drilled in, very simple bale setting.
Matching pair there.
You think the large ovals is a matching pair, absolutely, matching pair. Very, very large drop piece, that's the one about 2 inches long, once again drilled for a bale.
And the one at the end, which
And
you can pick that up.
the one at the end here,
That's magnificent colour.
lovely, lovely colour in that stone. So that deserves a really, really custom design setting to complement that stone.
Really amazing colour. Great shape, great uniform sides. I see that it's having a nice cap on the top in silver.
Yes. Maybe complemented with a couple little accent stones.
Australian sapphires.
Australian sapphires, possible, certainly possible. They come in a range of colours, would complement this.